Hello, horror people. We're here with Frances Lu-Pai Ippolito. She's going to tell us all the secrets about winding paths, which you'll find out about, cozy cosmic horror. Yeah, all the stuff. Anyways, hi, Frances. I was going to
Hi.
start pelting you with questions, but okay, I'll let you say
Okay.
hi first. Go ahead.
Okay. Break the veil. Let's go.
So tell me a little bit about Winding Paths, which is coming out, and it's actually kind of, I was going to say a game-changing anthology, but no pun intended.
Yeah, so I had the bright idea of trying to do two anthologies at the same time, which I would say probably in retrospect I was not ready for, but I have enjoyed the experience. So, Winding Paths is supposed to come out in the fall, probably late October, early November. We're wrapping up on some of the frame story, and then we'll be putting it into layout. We have the cover already, all the stories and the poetry, all that's in. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to share it. Basically, when I was thinking about starting to put together an anthology, I kept thinking, I really like playing tabletop games. That's what I enjoy doing with my free time outside of writing and reading and other things. And I was just thinking, there'd be a really great crossover if we could just make reading anthologies a more like gamey, playful experience, but also be able to bring in some of these wonderful writers and their stories into the game space to kind of, cross over and share the creative work by both communities. Because really, there's a lot of similarities between them. There's so much that goes into creating a game and DMing a game, and in a lot of ways, writing a story and creating your characters and developing your plot is a match for that. And yeah, so that's what I wanted to do. And Winding Paths is sort of this, I would say, like a child of labor, sweat, blood, and tears, where we have all these speculative game short stories and poems, and they're tied together through a choose your next story mechanic. There's a lot of other stuff going on there as well. There's a cipher you have to figure out to get extra stuff that I won't tell you very much more about because you'll have to figure it out from the book. And Angela, you're in it, and you have this amazing poem that kind of really is actually like a summary of gaming. It's all I'm not going to give it away, but it is kind of like captures all of gaming and kind of the feel of it. And the cover of the book, which was important to me to really hit that crossover between the communities. The cover is a board game. It's the royal game of which is one of the oldest known board games from Mesopotamia. And the game is playable on the book. So you can put the book down and take out the pieces in the book itself, or if you don't want to do that, you can take proxies, and you can actually play against another person
That is
on the
so
book itself.
cool. That
Yeah.
is so cool. And where did the idea come for that? Because I don't think I have ever really seen anything like that.
I made it up. I kept thinking, how can I make cover art that really speaks to what it is that I enjoy? And this is it. I did get the inspiration from one of the stories and from one of the writers in the anthology, Marianne Zenos, who also won Writers of the Future. Her story involves the royal game of and when I looked up the game and saw kind of the ancient design, I looked at it and I immediately recognized it as a board game. And that's the feedback I've been getting, is that people in the gaming space, as soon as they see this design, they immediately know what it is. They don't know what game necessarily, but they know it's a game. And that's what I
Yeah,
wanted.
that's so cool. Do you, so you're thinking like maybe we have competitions at the different book sites? That would be fun.
I want writers to fight each other on the game in game stores. That would be
Oh,
the hope. I want to do readings. We'll be doing virtual readings, so over Zoom or whatever platform. We'll be doing in-person ones as well. And what I've kind of discovered about this crossing over the communities is how much gaming itself really does provide this like playfulness and cohesiveness to a community of people. So I think some people I had invited to the anthology, like, well, I don't really play any games. I'm like, no, you play games. You definitely play games. Whether or not it's a board game or a card game,
Yeah.
mind game, a social deduction game, we all play games. It's kind of our nature. So yeah, that's been something that I really enjoy. That all the writers and all the contributors, all the poets have fun doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a fun project. I say was, for me it was, but for you it still is a fun project.
No, it's never ending because as a publisher, it never ends. That's an actual.
Who has time to play games?
No, it's been really fun to try to also weave together the stories because it is winding paths, which means
Mhm.
that everybody can read the stories linearly if you want to. If you want to read it from page one to the last page, totally fine. It's totally readable. And in fact, if you do it that way, you'll probably figure out some secrets earlier than somebody else, maybe. But if you read it in the pathways that we provide through a choose your next story, a kind of like choose your next adventure mechanic,
Yeah.
um, it takes you sort of like on a different journey. And I haven't really seen that with short stories.
Mm.
The closest that I could think of was like, back in the day like The Crypt Keeper or like Tales from the Dark Side or like The Princess Bride, right? There was this frame story where there was something happening. You had long periods where you were in the other story and you come out, but both stories mattered. And
Mhm.
trying to figure out how to balance all of that has been it's an interesting experience, but hopefully we figured it out and it won't be like a tiresome experience. It'll be kind of interesting to see how you can go through these stories in a certain way and they're linked and
Mhm.
kind of in a interesting mechanic.
No, I think that's a brilliant idea, because you're empowering the reader anyways. So it can't be a tiresome because they can just choose not to
You don't have to
play.
do it.
You don't want to play, you don't have to play. You can read it linearly. You might want to read it linearly and then come back and play, or vice versa. I'll probably do both. Um,
Yeah. Well, we
but
make
yeah.
sure that if you did follow through the paths, there would be at least something that you get at the end that would be worthwhile. So I won't give it away, but um, in any game, the victory conditions matter. Or,
Mhm.
you don't want to do all these things and at the end kind of feel like, why did you do that? So for this to work for me, it had to have payoff
Mhm.
for a reader, and hopefully that's built in as well.
Yeah, that's very exciting. I cannot wait to hold this in my hands and to read this.
I will send it
When
to you.
Yeah, I know, like that wasn't my broad hint. Do you ship to Brazil? When is the target date for this to come out? I know a lot of times it has to be a little bit of a loose date because of life and publishing is a chaotic and
Mhm.
noble venture.
Our target right now is late October, early November. We've had
Okay.
a lot of interest from on both the writing and the game side for getting copies for reviews, but we're not going to necessarily wait for all those to come back. We're
Hmm.
going to create it because ultimately, I think for me, I just want the book and the games to be available for whoever wants to play it.
Hmm.
And it's kind of leading into what I want to do next year, which is what I call magazine games or game zine. And when I was growing up, you and I have talked a lot about marginalized communities and diversity and access. Um, and one of the things that I found interesting about the gaming space is how sometimes some communities are not necessarily going to be able to access the games that are quite expensive. I mean, there's $80 board games or $100 board games, and they look great
Hmm.
and they're fun, and I have a ton of them. But I have nostalgia for the times when games were just like paper, like you opened up a magazine, you cut out the pieces, and then you just played on it, right? It cost like
Yeah.
$10, right? So what I would like to do in the magazine games is to curate some games that will be basically playable in the magazine. You can cut out the pieces and then have some stories that are also inspired or tied to the games along with game reviews, and have that available as, you buy the volume and you've got 3 or 4 games in there for, $25, as opposed to, spending $100 on a game that you might play once or twice, but then you have to store it, and then,
Yeah.
you might not play any other games for a while. So yeah, I wanted to address the access issue too.
Yeah. I think that's a really, there's so much stress and discord and everything right now everywhere. I kind of like the idea of bringing games out in a more accessible way, because when we play with each other, we have fun with each other, and boundaries are broken and bridges are built. And so I'm kind of seeing this as maybe a nobler, higher cause, like it is this book, but everything that you're doing is really building communication and empathy with each other. When we play together, we don't fight with each other. I mean, we fight in the game.
Yeah,
It's okay to kill each other in the game. But then you leave and you're like, okay, I got all that stress out or whatever, and we're buddies now, we're friends.
Yeah, and yeah, no, I think that's all true. I mean, we've played games together, and sometimes, there's a learning curve, right, for a lot of games where he's like, oh, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what the rules
Especially
are,
that
but
Cthulhu.
the Cthulhu Wars one is great example, because one of our writers, Ben Monroe, has written in that universe. He's written a book for Cthulhu Wars. I think he wrote flavor text for the game.
Oh,
So again,
awesome.
that's just like another example of the crossover that happens between the writing world and the gaming world. And absolutely, I think it's about creating community through words, but also through like make believe and also like strategy, right? I think for me, if I have to spend like 2 or 3 hours trying to figure out how to beat everybody else at my table in this game, I feel like afterwards is a bonding experience. Even when I lose, I'm like, oh, and then I think for a lot of gamers, it's not always about beating everybody else. It's about how like you can improve your own performance.
Oh
And
yeah,
with
your
writing, it's the
teamwork.
same way too, right? Because it's the business of writing is really hard. So sometimes you're just trying to improve your own craft.
Yeah, exactly. I know and I actually wonder if other writers have this same thing. I've been RPGing since we've gotten to Brazil. Every Sunday is like our RPG day. So don't talk to me on Sunday, anybody, no appointments. I'm looking at you, Maxwell Gold. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
He's in this too. He's in this too. So he should understand, because he wrote something about games.
But one thing that I've noticed, that when I play RPG, I have to get out of the writer frame of mind, because I want to just observe. The story is happening in front of me, and I'm just here to observe and take notes. And then it's like, no, I actually have to be a part of this. So it is like switching on, but it's interactive storytelling. You become literally a part of the story. So I think it's fantastic.
I hope it'll be fun, and we'll see. I mean, it's a little bit of an experiment, but I haven't seen this done before, and we're gonna this is playtesting, I guess. Playtesting 101. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, which is how we learn the best. So I want to ask you a little bit about the name of your company, Demagogue Press, which I will say I looked it up, and I was very much like, Francis doesn't seem like a demagogue to me. So I'm going to ask her about this. Yeah, and then I did think, so what do I know? But I'm not opposed to the cult thing. I mean,
well, I thought it would be a catchy name, and I do lean toward horror writing, and so I thought it would be kind of funny to put that together. And yeah, I know you are part of the cult now. When you sign that contract for the poll,
Demagogue.
you actually, when I send you the copy of the book, it'll come with like a uniform. Like,
is that why I had to sign it in blood with the candles going, sitting in the circle?
Yes.
That makes sense. Okay.
But I only made you do it that way. Everybody else can just sign it.
Well, I will say it is a memorable name because I have pondered your name. I think I've pondered the name of Demagogue Press far more than I have pondered any other name of any press, including my own. Like, so I think it definitely works as a memorable name. So, whoops. That's cough and dance in the background.
Oh, is that Max? Hi, Max.
What are you saying about me?
Exactly.
So, but I think it's awesome. I love the name. And then you have a nonprofit as well, right? So everything connects up into this full circle with publishing.
Yeah, so for the nonprofit, one of the things that I was struggling, I think last year we were talking about it as you were like trying to convince me that publishing, it's like, you're like, are you sure? Are you sure? And what I realized is that I wanted to do too many things with one press. And so the nonprofit is going to be all about marginalized, diverse voices, and also just, projects that are community based. Although I would say gaming is community based too, but it's, a little bit different. The first book that we'll have out for that is a children's picture book from the Qilin refugee community in Portland. And so the thing that I'm not Korean, but the thing that kind of troubled me is that when I tried to find some books for the children of this heritage, I couldn't find very many, and certainly none that were about the experience of being, having to move and basically get displaced out of your home through war and having to go to a refugee camp and then hopefully finding a sanctuary city. So my writer is of Korean heritage. Our illustrator is also of Korean heritage. He is in Thailand, and the plan is to have the book out in June of next year, released on International Refugee Day. And all the money goes back into the project. Like, we're not making anything for it other than just covering expenses. We're putting it all back into the project so we can create more books, a curriculum to provide for any schools that want it, and then also to help fund, I guess I would say, other nonprofits who have existing programs to improve the opportunities for that refugee group.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I can't wait to see this, especially because I think when I first heard of Qilin, I misread it as Karen, and I had just no idea that this group of people even existed. Like, it was completely outside of. So I think it's fantastic that you're bringing that to the forefront, so that we can know about it. It is important to know about all these marginalized. That's very marginalized voice.
Yeah, and I think part of it was that I have a copy of it. Unquiet Spirits, right? This idea that there is a monolithic Asian diaspora is not true, right? So there are so many groups, and we get like attention from some of the larger groups. I mean, still, like, it's still a struggle even then, right? But for the groups that are smaller or displaced, don't have their countries anymore, and struggle to maintain their language and culture, that's kind of what the purpose is of the nonprofit, is to try to elevate that issue.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and I think that's where you and I started working together, is because we both kind of have that same idea. Then we wound up being, well, I was going to say being in Unquiet Spirits together, but yeah, Unquiet Spirits that you just showed. I fell in love with you when I read your essay. I love that essay, and it was at such a crucial time for me that I wept. Like, that was the one that I was reading along, and I always think, like, you just punched me in the gut with that one.
Oh, we're gonna start crying again. We can't start crying because whenever we do this, where's Lee? Where's Lee?
Well, I'll be like, and then this thing happened. But no, it was such an powerful essay, because I was like reading it along, and it was talking about what not had just happened, but the situation, the shooting in Georgia, Atlanta, right? Yeah. And I think it was only like a month or two old when I read your essay. It was pretty recent. And I was reading along about, being Asian and all the, and then all of a sudden you bring that up, and it was like, bam, and I was weeping. And that's when I was like, okay, who is this Frances Ippolito? I really like her. She made me cry. So, but tell me a little bit
She
about.
brings you games. She brings you games now. She's not all tears.
She
We
made
can
me
play games.
cry, and then she gave me a game. So, so what was it like to write that for you? I mean, I can't imagine reading it, and I started weeping. It would have been like a heart-rending experience to actually write that.
Oh, it was hard. I think it was hard for I think everyone who is in Unquiet Spirits definitely. Like, I think we've all talked about it, together and individually with like pairs of us. And I mean, it's hard to I think articulate the all of the stuff that you bring with you when you carry it from your heritage and all that. And then in particular, trying to freely release it and expose it to the world, right? And
Mm,
then also trying to tie it to something that might be like a meaningful, not I won't say educational, but like a meaningful like revelation that maybe someone didn't really understand that a group of people were experiencing. So I think for me it was tough as just an exercise to do the mise because the structure fits really well, but it's not your traditional essay structure that you can kind of hide behind a little bit, right? Like
mm,
you have your traditional like just a structure, it's more memoir, but then it's not completely a memoir. So I felt it was all a challenge. But yeah, writing about it was very emotional because it wasn't just about me, just like the this anthology isn't Unquiet Spirits isn't just about any individual writer or contributor, right?
right, right. Yeah, and then that's some of the responses that I have gotten is that a lot of understanding, a lot of empathy built, a lot of I didn't realize all these things. I think people do tend to think Asian is Asian. There's one type of Asian, they're all Chinese or maybe Japanese, or you get two brands. And like you bring up, there's so many that we don't even know about everybody, and then the displacement, and then all of that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
So
think
I think this definitely, inspired me to do more and
yeah,
this came out in February, so it's still pretty fresh and pretty recent and yeah,
yeah.
keep
Well, what
going.
else are you doing? I know you said two anthologies. You have two
Oh
anthologies you're doing.
yeah.
So the other is the Cozy Cosmic Horror.
Yes, it's Cozy Cosmic. So this is through Underland Press with Mark Teppo and fabulous slate of poets and writers. And the idea actually came when Mark and I were talking, and we were like, we like cosmic, we like reading some of that horror because it is like this classic, like kind of unknown fear of the unknown, the abyss.
Yeah.
That is like something I think that's very human, right? Like being
Hmm.
afraid of the unknown is ancient.
Yeah.
But we were also kind of bored because oftentimes it's done. I would not always, but oftentimes it's
Hmm.
done kind of go along the same tracks, and there's nothing wrong with it. Beautiful writing, but just feel like we can do more. So he
Hmm.
and I talked about it, and we thought, what if we tried to make it hopeful? Because that's like the antithesis of cosmic. Like, how
Yeah.
can we make it so that it almost is subversive and sort of flips it a little? And that was kind of the basis behind this. We weren't sure if we were going to get any stories or anything, any poems, because it's a really weird submission call. And I was like, okay, we'll try. And we
Hmm.
had some fabulous, fabulous submissions. I don't think I've laughed so hard in a long time in reading a horror story. Like there's some amazing. There's one story I read, and I won't tell the whole thing, but it's about a radio show, and someone calls in, and then there's like random like lines that are very Lovecraftian. It's just like, what is this? But it's like one of those radio shows that you hear all the time about people like, oh, why didn't you
Yeah.
call me back or something? It's hilarious. And we have stories are like kind of like updated King in Yellow, but like a different version of it. And there are just characters I think that who are being featured who don't usually make it into these cosmic horror tales, like 70-year-old women who are in assisted living, who can also have these like interesting adventures.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm excited for people to see it. It's a little crazy. It's a little weird. It's really funny, and mainly it's bizarre. But there's definitely that you can tell from reading it. It's got the inspiration from cosmic,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's not just like a bunch of tentacle dating. That's not what it is. Because some people are like, oh, that's cozy. I'm like, it can be. It can be.
So I love the idea.
Can
I
be.
feel like we're trending towards wanting a little like, everything everywhere all at once. What genre is that? Define that movie. And that's kind of what this reminds me of, is there's not really a definition, and we don't want the definition anymore. We're kind of tired of it. That I think we've realized with like multiverses and some of the scientific, like the real, I know I was just citing fiction, but the real things that are happening in science with quantum computing and AI and everything else, that reality is not necessarily reality anymore. And we're craving this kind of story, this chaotic. There is a guide, so it's not just throwing you out into the cosmic horror coziness universe. That's now a thing that exists somewhere. But this guideline to lead you into it, but you have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of thinking in terms of my writing, and I guess what I'm trying to put out into the world and what I like, the projects I like to work on. I think it's very similar to some of the things that you like, which is creating things that don't exist. Like Unquiet
Mm-hmm.
Spirits didn't exist, Tortured Willows didn't exist. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, why? There's no reason you can't create it. Maybe it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't fit neatly on one shelf or the other, but it doesn't mean there's no readership. Doesn't mean that
Mm-hmm.
people won't enjoy it. Doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile to make it, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I mean. I'm not super subversive, and maybe I'm a demagogue. I'm just like trying to find things where it's like I wish those things existed. So let's just make it. Find some people who are interested in doing it together, and we just make it. We make it happen.
Sounds like what a demagogue would say. Just make this happen.
DM me. You want to join?
So are you going to start like with like super villain, like, because I see you doing that with your hands, so you're going to get like a laugh and everything, like
Oh, I like that. I might have to use that.
you can have that one. I have like a whole collection.
Your collection.
Evil villain laughs.
Love it.
All right. How about going back to like functional things? Because I know how we can like Francis and I are friends, for anybody who doesn't know, so we can like just kind of go off. Y'all don't even have to be here. There can be no audience. We don't need an audience. We'll just like riff
4
off
days
into
later.
like yeah, exactly. But tell me about some of the other stuff you're doing right now, because you are a very active person. You are doing so many different things, volunteering. I know you do work for SIFWA and the HWA. You've got 2 publishing companies. You've done 2 anthologies. You're also probably a little bit insane, but it's okay.
That's why I'm recruiting you. The cult needs help. Yeah, but you're also very, very busy, so I think I'm probably just copying. I'm like, oh, Angela does it. I think I can do it too. Except I don't know how you not sleep. I don't sleep.
No, I've been very lazy lately. I've been like, you know what, naps are okay.
Oh, maybe I should try that, or coffee. A lot more coffee.
Lots of coffee.
But other things. So Under Her Eyes, a poetry collection that's coming out. That is going to be for the benefit of Pixel Project, which is focused on helping women who have suffered from domestic violence. And so the poem in that, Playlist of the Damned, is coming out through Weird Little Worlds with Willow Becker. I love her. And so there's a story in there. And for volunteering things, I started with Sarah Waka, the Oregon HWA chapter. Yay! We have our logo, and it has like a slug that's typing because it's very to have slugs around. And yeah, we're having monthly meetings. We are trying to work together as a community, collaborate on supporting each other's works as well as just building community. Because it's like you said, sometimes horror writers really have to work hard to find each other, and then once we do, it's like we like bundle into a giant like snake ball or something. We're just like we're getting bigger. No one can ever fight us, right? Like
Yeah.
so. It's been
Be
great to try to
afraid.
build exactly build build momentum with that. It's only about 2 months old, so we're new, but we're gaining a lot of interest. And I've gone to some other association events and plugged HWA, and I've had people sign up immediately to become members because they've just been looking for something like this.
Hmm.
And I always like to mention Young Willamette Writers because it is a free writing course workshop that happens every Saturday of every month, except for July. And in August, we have our conference. But it's free. It's free for any child in middle school or high school who wants to write because, it's hard even for adults to find classes. And, you got to pay for it. You got to get like these great teachers. So it's even harder if you're a kid who wants to be a writer, but your school might not have the resources or it might not be supportive of the kind of writing you want to do, which may be like something really like genre bendy, right? Or blending.
Hmm.
And we just want to make sure through Young Walnut Writers that any kid anywhere who wants to zoom in or come in person has that opportunity for that most writers don't have even now, just to have free classes from established professionals in the industry. So for example, Angela, you presented before for them and we did poetry together and they loved it. And these kids are dedicated. They come every single month. They have books written. They want to pitch to publishers. Like they are ready. This is what they want to do. And they come in asking questions like, how do I do plot development? I've read like, Save the Cat. I want to do this and do that. Like they're serious about this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really enjoy. Sometimes I'm like, how can I outright these kids? I can't. I can't. They're so fast and they're so
Yeah.
creative.
I was a
Yeah.
little bit because you said, come present to the kids with poetry. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be cute. We'll write a few rhymes or, and like probably within 5 minutes, I was like, oh, I need to up my game because these guys are serious. More than I do, I think. They're like, wait, so they got that TikTok thing and all the things going on. So
Yeah,
actually,
they're
you guys
very
show
into it.
me they're very smart. They are not, but I think it's fantastic that you guys do that.
Yeah, it's a great program. We've been able to get some grants from different organizations who are very supportive of keeping it going, which means that we're able to give an honorarium to our presenters. And most, sometimes they're just like, oh, we're going to donate back into the program, which is very nice. But we also believe that writers, authors, creators, poets should be paid for their time. And if they present and teach a class, they should be paid something, which we work very hard to make sure happens as well. So
Yeah.
everybody kind of get something out of it, the kids especially.
Yeah.
And then I guess I'm not sure what else. I'm sure there's other stuff I'm forgetting about, but no, I'm just I'm glad to be able to have the opportunity, right? I mean, a lot of things are kind of going crazy in the world, but I do feel like there is an opportunity to create, and there's space for that. There's always space for that. To make space for it. Like you and I met in like I think we met through HWA, but it was like through Moneria's Fright Club, which I had taken
Yeah.
a class for, and you did that experience I think like years before, like for some other reason. And then I
Yeah.
connected to you via that, and then it just kind of our snakeball, like it just kind of
Yeah.
rolled. So I think
Yeah.
everything that I'm working on is hopefully for the purpose of building community.
Yeah. I will say from knowing you that you are a community builder. Just you're very, very good at connecting people and making things happen. You definitely make things happen. And I have so much respect and adoration for you for all of that.
That's why we get along. We have the degree in GSD, which is
Yeah. I like
I
how
don't know if
you
you
go
can say
back
that.
into villain mode. You can say that. That's okay. I like how you go back into villain mode when you do that.
Villain. Every villain is a protagonist in their own story.
Exactly. The ends justify the means.
Of course, of course.
I guess that's about it. I thank you so much for being on the show. Tell me where we can find you and keep in touch so that we can find Winding Paths, where we can find, follow you, follow Demagogue Press, and all of those things.
Sure. So my website skills are still developing. So you can go to demagoguepress.com to get updates, and we are updating the website soon. The cover art is up there now, but once the book is released, we'll have links. And if you want to find my old website, which is francisippolito.com, you can, but it is kind of out of date. So maybe like I am truly a demagogue. I'm hiding. Right. Am I hiding? But you can find me on Facebook and on Instagram. You can find me if you search for me. I'll be there. I think on Instagram I'm Lu-Pai Ippolito at this point because I had to change it because there's a lot of people hacking accounts. So
Oh
I had to switch it. But yeah, and I'll send out little posts and other things on social media as time gets near. With the 2 anthologies, I'm trying to, as you know, like try to give service to one and then, kind of have that going and then start working on the other one. That way it's not an overload for everybody out there to try to figure out what is going on. Is this a cozy cosmic game story? Like, where's the game in this book? All I saw were cultists. There were no games.
That's the 3rd anthology, the Cozy Cosmic Gaming Anthology.
Let's just with lots of stories from marginalized groups. That would be perfect. Like that's all we need is we just need to like combine everything together, and then we'll be good.
Yeah, one anthology.
Which may not be actually a bad thing to do. If we can get to a point where everything, everywhere, all at once, then it would be. It just would take. Yeah.
Yeah. There are no rules here. You are making the rules, so.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's it for this show. Thank you so much for being on. I look forward to Winding Paths, which are the winding paths that you can go to find Francis Lu-Pai Ippolito. And
yeah, see, it's hard. You gotta go search. It's like a geocache with no clues.
Yes, but I will say it's worth the search to find you.
Aw. Well, I want to come find you too. Although I think you're like in transition in different places. You're super secretive.
Yeah, next to me I have chaos because it's the drill because I'm going to go install my office in a few minutes. So, but yeah, much easier I think because it's just one link. But now I'm digressing because I've been distracted by all the drills and everything. I shouldn't have looked.
That sounds like something a demagogue would say. I'm building my office.
Building my secret lair, which is hidden in a closet. So
there we go.
On that note, I will let you go. I thank everybody for being here again. Links will be in the description. So instead of wandering the wandering paths, you can also just click the link in the description. So, thank you so much, Francis, for being here.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to Winding Paths and all the other projects you talked about.
Thank you.